Disrespect doesn't start with what they say. It starts the moment you lose control of yourself. Most people think disrespect is about insults, tone, or being talked down to. It's not. It's about how much emotional access you give someone who hasn't earned it. That's why one careless comment can ruin your mood for hours. Why a look of dismissal can make you feel smaller. Why some people seem to live rent-free in your head, long after the moment has passed. The Stoics saw this weakness clearly. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire while being criticized, mocked, and undermined. Yet he never begged for respect. He never reacted to prove his worth. Because he understood one brutal truth: the more emotionally reactive you are, the easier you are to disrespect. In this video, you'll learn 10 Stoic lessons to handle disrespect with calm, authority, and self-command, without anger, without weakness, and without losing your dignity. This isn't about winning arguments, it's about becoming untouchable. If you're done letting disrespect control your emotions, stay with me. Comment below. I respond with discipline. 1. Disrespect tests. Emotional control. Disrespect is rarely about what is said, it's about what it pulls out of you. When someone talks down to you, interrupts you, or dismisses your presence, there's a brief moment where the interaction is decided. Not by them, but by you. Most people reveal weakness immediately. Their tone sharpens. Their body stiffens. They rush to defend their position or prove their value. That reaction feels justified, but it quietly hands over authority. The Stoics understood this dynamic clearly. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that no one can damage his character unless he allows it. Words, gestures, and opinions have no force on their own. They only gain power when they trigger emotion. And emotional reactions are readable, predictable, easy to push. That's why people who react strongly are disrespected more often, not less. They signal that their inner state is accessible. The Stoic response is not silence born from fear. It is restraint born from control. You slow your breathing. You keep your posture steady. You allow the moment to pass without urgency. This creates imbalance in your favor. Disrespect looks for friction. When it meets calm, it loses momentum. Before you think about responding outwardly, you must secure control inwardly. Because once your emotions are stable, every response becomes a choice, not a reflex. And choice is where authority lives. 2. Silence is the first response. When disrespect happens, most people feel pressure to respond immediately, to correct the tone, to defend their position, to prove they are not someone to be dismissed. That urgency is exactly what disrespect looks for. The Stoics treated silence differently than most people do. Not as avoidance, not as fear, but as deliberate restraint. Marcus Aurelius understood that words spoken too quickly rarely serve dignity. They serve emotion. Disrespect thrives on reaction. It needs resistance to justify itself. When you rush to respond, you validate the provocation. Silence interrupts that cycle. Not passive silence, not confused silence, but composed silence. You don't rush to fill the space. You don't explain yourself. You don't rush to correct their behavior. You let the moment breathe. This does 2 things at once. Internally, it gives you time to regain full control of your state. Externally, it removes the stimulus that disrespect depends on. People often mistake silence for weakness because they confuse noise with power. The Stoics never made that mistake. They knew that the person who can remain still under provocation is the one setting the terms of the interaction. Silence shifts the weight of the moment. It forces the other person to sit with what they said, without escalation. And more importantly, it signals something subtle but unmistakable. You are not reactive, and you are not easily pulled off center. Only after silence do Stoics decide whether a response is necessary at all. Because not every act of disrespect deserves acknowledgement, and none of them deserve immediate access to your emotions. 3. Disrespect reveals their character, not yours. One of the most common mistakes people make when disrespected is turning the moment inward. They ask themselves, did I say something wrong? Did I deserve that? Is there something wrong with me? That internal turn is where disrespect does the most damage. The Stoics refused this move. They understood a simple separation that most people blur. Behavior belongs to the one who performs it. When someone speaks dismissively, interrupts, or belittles, they are revealing how they manage power, emotion, and impulse, not who you are. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that people act from ignorance, insecurity, or habit, not from an accurate assessment of your worth. Disrespect is often a byproduct of their inner disorder. People who are centered don't need to dominate conversations. People who are secure don't need to diminish others. People who respect themselves rarely struggle to respect others. When you internalize disrespect, you take responsibility for something that was never yours. The Stoic response is mental separation. You observe the behavior without absorbing it. You register what happened without attaching meaning to yourself. This creates distance, not physical distance, but psychological distance, and psychological distance is protective. It prevents disrespect from shaping your self-image. It keeps your identity intact while still allowing you to respond intelligently if needed. You don't excuse the behavior. You simply refuse to personalize it. Because the moment you stop turning their actions into a verdict on yourself, disrespect loses its ability to destabilize you. What remains is clarity, and clarity always favors the disciplined. 4. Never explain yourself to disrespect. When someone disrespects you, the instinct to explain rises fast. You want to clarify your intention. You want to correct their misunderstanding. You want to make sure they see you the right way. That instinct feels reasonable. It is also a trap. The Stoics understood that explanation offered under disrespect is rarely heard as clarity. It is heard as defensiveness. Marcus Aurelius never tried to convince hostile minds of his virtue. He focused on living it. Because explanation seeks approval, while conduct establishes authority. Disrespect changes the rules of communication. In a respectful exchange, explanation can be useful. In a disrespectful one, it weakens your position. Why? Because explaining yourself implies that your dignity is up for debate. It suggests that being understood by them is necessary for your stability. Stoics do not accept that premise. They separate two things clearly: clarifying facts when it serves purpose, justifying oneself to protect ego. The second is never required. When you explain yourself to someone who has already dismissed you, you reward the behavior with access. You invite them deeper into your inner space. The Stoic response is restraint. You don't rush to be understood. You don't correct tone with words. You let actions speak, or you disengage entirely. This doesn't mean you tolerate disrespect. It means you refuse to negotiate your worth within it. Over time, this posture changes how others approach you. Not because you demanded respect, but because you stopped chasing understanding from the wrong place. And once explanation is no longer automatic, your presence becomes heavier, quieter, and harder to dismiss. 5. Control your body before your words. Disrespect is often noticed first in the body, not the mind. The jaw tightens, the shoulders rise, breathing becomes shallow, the face hardens before a single word is spoken. Most people try to control the situation with arguments. Stoics start somewhere else. They start with the body. Marcus Aurelius understood that the body broadcasts information long before the mouth does. If your body signals agitation, defensiveness, or tension, your words, no matter how calm, will carry weakness. That's why Stoic discipline begins physically. When disrespect occurs, the first task is not to respond. It is to regulate your posture and breath. You slow your breathing through the nose. You release tension from the jaw. You ground your feet and still your hands. This takes seconds, but it changes everything. A calm body sends a clear message. You are not threatened, rushed, or destabilized. From that state, words become optional and precise. Most confrontations escalate because bodies escalate first. Voices rise because breath is shallow. Arguments sharpen because muscles are tight. The Stoic reverses this chain. By calming the body, you calm the interaction, even if the other person remains agitated. This does not mean submission. It means you refuse to mirror chaos. Once your body is steady, you can choose to speak, set a boundary, or walk away without emotional leakage. And if you decide not to speak at all, your physical composure often communicates more authority than words ever could. Control the body first. The rest follows naturally. 6. Set boundaries without emotion. Most people think boundaries require force, raised voices, sharp words, visible anger. That belief keeps them trapped between two extremes, enduring disrespect in silence or exploding under pressure. The Stoics chose a third path. They understood that the strongest boundaries are calm, brief, and unemotional. Marcus Aurelius didn't argue endlessly with those who crossed lines. He corrected when necessary and withdrew when correction was ignored. Because boundaries are not about convincing others, they are about defining where you stand. When disrespect appears, the Stoic does not react emotionally. He responds deliberately. A boundary does not need explanation. It does not need justification. It does not need intensity. It needs clarity. A short statement, a neutral tone, a steady presence. For example, "That's not acceptable. We're not speaking that way. Let's keep this respectful." Nothing more. Emotion weakens boundaries because it shifts focus to your feelings. Calm strengthens boundaries because it centers on behavior. When you set a boundary without visible anger, you remove the drama that disrespect feeds on. And if the boundary is ignored, the Stoic escalates not emotionally, but structurally. He reduces access. He limits engagement. He creates distance, not as punishment, but as consequence. This teaches others how to treat you without a single argument. Boundaries enforced calmly are remembered longer than boundaries shouted. And over time, people learn something important about you. Disrespect doesn't provoke you. It simply costs them access. 7. Detach from the need to be respected. Most people say they want respect. What they actually want is recognition. They want to be acknowledged, validated, treated a certain way. And when that doesn't happen, frustration appears. That frustration is visible, and visible need is weakness. The Stoics understood a hard truth. The more you need respect, the easier you are to disrespect. Marcus Aurelius never asked the world to treat him fairly. He asked himself to act fairly, regardless of treatment. That difference changes everything. When you need respect, you monitor reactions constantly. You read tone, you measure gestures, you keep score. In the moment you feel slighted, your emotional balance is shaken. The Stoic removes himself from that game, not because respect doesn't matter, but because self-respect comes first. When your behavior is aligned with your values, external validation becomes optional. You stop reacting to small slights. You stop correcting every perceived insult. You stop chasing acknowledgement. This creates a strange reversal. People who are desperate for respect invite disrespect. People who are indifferent to it often command it naturally, not because they demand it, but because they don't leak insecurity. Detachment here is not coldness, it is independence. You treat others correctly without needing them to return it. You hold your standards without requiring applause. And when disrespect appears, it no longer threatens anything essential, because nothing essential was placed in their hands to begin with. 8. Choose distance. Over confrontation. When people feel disrespected, they often believe confrontation is the solution. They want to correct behavior. They want to assert dominance. They want to set things straight. The Stoics were far more selective. They understood that not every battle deserves your presence. Marcus Aurelius knew that engaging with small, disrespectful minds only drags you down to their level. And once you're there, clarity is lost. Distance is not avoidance. It is discrimination. You are deciding where your energy belongs and where it does not. Confrontation keeps you tied to the source of disrespect. Distance loosens that tie. When you step back calmly, you stop feeding the dynamic. You reduce opportunities for friction. You regain control over your time and attention. This is not silent resentment. It is conscious withdrawal. Stoics don't announce their distance. They simply adjust access. They speak less. They engage selectively. They invest where respect is mutual. And something interesting happens. Disrespect often fades when it no longer gets proximity. People either correct their behavior or remove themselves. Either outcome works. Distance protects your composure without escalation. It prevents minor disrespect from turning into ongoing conflict. Most people confront because they want resolution. Stoics choose distance because they value stability. And stability, once protected, makes confrontation unnecessary more often than not. 9. Improve. What makes you untouchable? Disrespect often feels personal, but over time, something else becomes clear. People tend to disrespect those they don't take seriously. Not always out of malice, often out of perception. The Stoics didn't waste energy trying to correct every slight. They focused on something far more effective, becoming solid. Marcus Aurelius didn't demand respect through words. He earned gravity through consistency, discipline, and competence. Stoic power compounds quietly. When your work is reliable, when your presence is calm, when your decisions are measured, when your emotions are steady, disrespect struggles to find a foothold. This is not about proving superiority. It's about reducing vulnerability. Many people spend their energy reacting to disrespect. Stoics invest their energy in development. They sharpen skills. They improve communication. They refine judgment. They strengthen self-control. Over time, this creates a shift. You're no longer someone others casually dismiss, not because you confronted them, but because your value became harder to ignore. Disrespect thrives where there is chaos, inconsistency, or insecurity. It weakens around clarity and competence. Stoics understand that the most effective response to disrespect is not retaliation. It is progress. Progress changes the dynamic without a single argument, and eventually, people adjust, or they become irrelevant. Either way, your focus remains where it belongs, on becoming someone whose inner order speaks louder than any reaction ever could. 10. Respond only when it serves your values. Not every act of disrespect deserves a response, and not every response deserves your energy. Most people react because they feel compelled to, because silence feels like loss, because walking away feels unfinished. The Stoics rejected this impulse. Marcus Aurelius filtered every action through one question. Does this align with reason and character? If the answer was no, he let it go. Disrespect often tempts you into unnecessary engagement. It tries to pull you into proving, correcting, or defending. The Stoic pauses and evaluates. Will responding improve the situation or inflate it? Will it reinforce boundaries or feed ego? Will it reflect your values or your irritation? If a response serves clarity, safety, or principle, it is delivered calmly and without excess. If it serves only pride, it is withheld. This selectivity changes everything. You stop being reactive. You stop being predictable. You stop being pulled into exchanges that drain more than they resolve. People begin to sense that access to your attention is not automatic. It is conditional, and that alone alters how they approach you. When you respond only from alignment, your words carry weight, your silence carries meaning, and your presence becomes deliberate. Disrespect loses influence not because it disappears, but because it no longer dictates your behavior. Calm is not weakness, it's control. Disrespect will always exist. Different people, different settings, different pressures. What matters is not whether it appears, but whether it moves you. The Stoics understood that dignity is not defended through aggression, but preserved through self-command. You don't need to win every exchange. You don't need to correct every slight. You don't need to demand respect to deserve it. When your emotions are steady, your boundaries are clear, and your actions are aligned, disrespect loses its leverage. It may still knock, but it no longer gets inside. If one of these lessons shifted how you see these moments, reflect on it before your next interaction. And remember, the strongest response is not the loudest one. It's the one that leaves your inner order untouched.